Well, hello, everybody.
Good morning.
Hey, did you survive all the food, Jamie?
Did you do some exercise, Heidi? Some stretches, some yoga, some walk?
I actually got outside and walked every day, which was wonderful. Although the wind was a little nippy one day, and I was like, "Oh, I'm not sure I'm ready for that."
Yeah.
But I did get outside. So I hope you all had a happy Thanksgiving. Welcome to Hen and Chick Studio. I'm Heidi.
Jamie.
This is Jamie, and if you have not been with us the last few weeks, this is week 3 of our Festive Fun Sew-Along.
And it's been fun already. Some people are done, so if you're already done, start another one.
I was going to say, bravo to you who are already done. We love it. You can get more done, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So let's walk through the process of our Festive Fun Sew-Along real quick, because it's very easy. And I did not happen to grab the free pattern I don't have the hand sheet, but it is actually called Square Dance. If you go to our website on the Stash Buster tab, you're going to find everything that we're talking about. You're going to find the link to the free pattern, and that pattern finishes out at, it's a nice size, it probably says it right on there, 43 by 56.
Well, hey, Heidi.
Oh, there you go. Oh, we're so good. We're so good.
We do have a pattern.
We do have the pattern. Aren't we funny? Okay, so basically what we're doing is that we're suggesting that you download that pattern for free and make something. It could be for yourself. It could be for a donation. Maybe there is an organization or a hospital or somebody you know that's not feeling well that would appreciate that. Or maybe you just need that last minute gift for somebody. That this is a great pattern. It's
truly a great pattern, and it goes together fast.
And what we have seen over and over and over and over is it looks good in every color combination we have seen.
And if it's really scrappy or if it's patterned, I mean, there's so many options.
We've seen people use blocks, like instead of a panel, sometimes a fabric comes in what we would call blocks rather than a big panel. We've seen it cut up with that. We've seen it kids. We've seen it brights.
Flannels, all sorts of colors.
And you know where it's so much fun
Seasonal.
is seasonal. Absolutely. It's so much fun that everybody is posting. So I'm going to say step 1 is download the pattern for free. Yep. Okay, that's step 1. Step 2 is make sure you are a member of our creative community, which is a Facebook group. It is free to belong to the group. Although we do ask you a couple of questions when you, if you're not a member and you are asking to join, answer those quick questions. We just like to know how you learned about us, that kind of thing, what your favorite color is, and then we accept you, kind of thing, and then you're a member of the group. And
then you can see, it's just fascinating. We get inspired by whatever people are posting on there, and it's fun for us to watch when we get the opportunity to look and see what people are doing.
And so that has been fun, and that definitely people were sewing over the weekend, and that's exciting. So that's step 2. Step 3 is just to have fun learning while we do our weekly video. We decided we're going to do 4 videos. So the first 2 weeks are posted on the Stash Buster page. So we did a whole video on fabric selection. Then we did a video last week on cutting. Today we're going to talk a little bit about piecing and pressing. And then next Monday night, the 5th, at 7 o'clock, we're going to talk about finishing all of our projects and the binding process. So those are going to be the 2 things that we're going to talk about. And we know the time of that. It's going to be December 5th at 7 o'clock right here on Facebook Live. So that we'll be doing that. Yeah, so it really is, this is meant to be fun. And again, great way to use your scraps.
Absolutely great way to
use your scraps. And of course, if you don't have scraps, we've got fabric combinations for you.
Absolutely.
In some flannels and stuff, and we'll show that in a minute. How's that?
Let's do that.
Okay, so we're going to talk about piecing. This isn't the glamorous part of this.
No, but it makes a difference. Just like your cutting makes a difference. And being accurate in your cutting, accurate in your piecing, everything turns out.
That's right. You've got to have a 1/4 inch seam allowance.
Yes.
And and as funny as that sounds, you think, oh, well, I'm using my 1/4 inch foot, or I'm using the line on my sewing machine that's a 1/4 inch. There are still times when you need to double check that. I even, when I was busy sewing this weekend, the kids have a little extra piece on the side of the foot, and I was pushing my fabric to the side of that, rather, I'm not saying the outside rather than the inside. And do you know that my seam was too big? It was. And it's interesting. Like, I'm like, okay, so I readjusted, and where I was looking, where I was laying my fabric,
so
measured.
Started pushing the fabric up to it's a guide to know where you're.
Yes. And so little things like that. There are definitely tools out there. We did an entire educational program with Celine Perkins from Perkins Dry Goods on how to use the seam guide as a way to check your 1/4 inch.
Because it truly is. We can't stress that enough, especially if you are happening to be a beginner quilter or just starting in the process. If we can get that right away, that 1/4 inch makes a difference, and it's going to make your success so much. I mean, you're just going to feel less frustrated. All that. So we're going to stress that 1/4 inch seam is so important, because that is how the patterns are written.
Yes.
Is using that.
Yes. And the free class that I'm talking about with the 1/4 inch, how to do a perfect 1/4 inch, we'll definitely put the link in the comments and stuff. But it is, if you go under our, on our website, under the inspiration tab and click on Hen House Happy Hour, you're going to find, there's like a dozen videos in there, all sorts of things, but one of them is the 1/4 inch guide. Right. So that's important. The next thing that I think we could talk about a little bit is the tools that we use.
Right.
And again, pins. Not all pins are created equal.
And it's not necessarily glamorous. You might think, this one's, I'm going to just randomly pick out a price. This one's $5 for these, and these ones are $8 for these. Don't even know if that's a price.
Correct.
But you might be tempted to say, I'm just going to go with $3 ones because they're cheaper. Doesn't mean that you're going to be as successful. Again, the differences.
Now I'm going to walk over here because I think we've got to have a really good visual. And I'm using one of our Zirkle pin holders. If you have never used a magnetic pin holder, that's why this is like, you wonder, like, why is it like those pins hanging here? And in fact, you know what? I'm going to take them off because they're
in the way.
Well, they're making it a little, the blurriness. Okay. So now this, I got to get my finger right here. Okay. These are the 3 pins I'm focusing on right here, okay? The one in the center, this guy right here, is my favorite. Those are the silk head pins, and they are just lovely. They're very fine, and they're very bendable, but they're great for getting a small bite of fabric when you are trying to piece. This one with the yellow head, can you visually see how much thicker it is than the silk head pin? And yes, it is great. Those are the ones we actually recommend for working on the long arm when we're going through the zipper and the selvages, because it is just a more durable pin. But sometimes when you're trying to take a small bite of fabric to get seams matched up, you feel like you are holding, putting a nail through. Now, these new fangled pins, and what is the company of those? Jamie's going to get the name of them.
Magic pins?
The magic pins. They have a variety of lengths and thicknesses as well. And of course, when you're piecing, we love the thinnest ones possible for what you're doing. Of course, the longer the shank, but I know a lot of people are liking the grippies on those. And so
this is the blue that you were showing.
Yes, and so those are considered quilting pins. So they're 1 3/4 inch. So they're longer, but they're a little bit thicker.
So this would be more like it. I would use it more if I was trying to hold the fabric after I pieced, not necessarily for
correct.
piecing.
Now, and I can see on there it says 0.5, and this one is 0.4. These are silk pins, so see they're a little bit finer, and those are also 0.4, but those are short. The applique pins are short. So there's a pin out there for everybody, let me just say. And if you need a good magnetic, then grab a Zirkle. They come in a variety of colors, even black, so that if you're looking for a gift for maybe somebody, that wants a little more masculine color.
Oh yeah, because you can do anything.
You can put nails on them. Nails, and if you've never seen how they work, basically the idea is that if you drop a pin, it'll throw the head out, and so that then you can grab the head and not get poked by the pin.
And the beauty of that is we have customers coming in the store, which is perfectly fine.
Yes.
Just so if you hear the ding-a-ling on this. It works well when you knock off your pins if you happen to be sewing and you knock them off, because then you can just take your magnet and go like that.
That's right. They pick up easily.
Okay.
Easily.
So let's keep talking about. So we talked about the cutting and stuff. Now we talked about the having
Pins.
a 1/4-inch seam
Yep.
and the importance of pins. Can we talk before we're actually talk about your piecing and how you did your maybe chain sewing? Is that what we want to do next?
Yes. So should we do that first?
Yeah,
okay. Okay. So a couple of things that I want to show you the way I sew. First of all, I use what I call a starter strip. And a lot of times people aren't sure what I'm talking about. So literally it is a scrap of fabric. I've folded it over and I put it underneath the sewing machine. And I always have a starter strip underneath the sewing machine because it just allows me to be ready to put the first piece right underneath the foot, and I don't waste very much fabric. Now, I love to chain piece. Do you see my...
And that means, Heidi, when you're saying that for somebody that hasn't done it before, exactly what... I mean, they can see they're hooked together, but how are you doing it? And
so I'm going to go up here and show you very closely that literally I am... I always say this is when you can use the word butt. I am butting up one block basically right next to the next one, and you can see up here there's just a very small piece of thread that's connecting them, and I'll go back and cut them all apart. So in this particular string, I actually have some that are already 4 patches because I was putting them together in 4 patches, and then I have a bunch of just 2 patches.
So you've taken them and you've put your right sides together. I mean, that seems like sense, but we just review everything as we do.
Absolutely. So when I'm trying to find the end, there we go. There we go. So I've put 2 squares together, and then I am sewing my 1/4-inch seam, and then literally I am again butting up the next 2 squares right under the presser foot. The next 2 squares. It prevents the bird's nest from happening underneath the fabric.
Versus if you were cutting each time.
Right, if I was cutting each time, and then, technically I'm saving thread. Not that thread is a, high-priced item, but when you're doing something like this, I would say it saves time.
I would agree with you.
More than anything, because I can just sew, and then I cut them apart. And I will say this is a great activity for children. It's how Golding Virginia started, is that I would chain piece, and then I'd give them their little kid scissors, and they'd go in there and cut the thread apart.
Yes. So you've pieced them together, and then so...
Yeah, so like I would go like this, and get in there. And break them all apart, basically is what I'm doing, so that I end up with my 2 pieces.
Okay, and so now let's move to the next step, because pressing is really what you're going to do next. And so you've chained those. I had chained some, but on purpose I did not press them as I put them together, so you could see if the difference. So these are not pressed, so you can see the back of the seams, they're just kind of where they are. It kind of has like a little humpy wave, what would you call that, something like that with it. And so your pressing becomes important at this point in time, because we want to have everything lay flat. And so I am a huge proponent of setting the seam before I open the pieces up. So this is, I tried to match some of these so that they were light, light, I'm going to call that my light, and this one my dark. So if I want all my seams to go towards the dark, I would lay that down, and then I would actually press on top of the seam that I've sewn. I like a good little burst of steam. And I don't know that we put water in there. And then I can open it up and use the tip of the iron to gently be able to press that open. And the idea is that by doing the setting of the seams and then pressing it open, that you're going to end up with a flatter seam. Let's see if I can get up here. There we go. Here, so that there's no very little lap over there. We don't want it to have any kind of a, you don't want to press seam. I'm going to iron one wrong right now, so people can see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Like hopefully, I'm trying to iron it wrong. Where you can, does that,
Yep.
that's probably about enough.
Yep. So, did you make a lump?
I tried
Yes.
to.
So she you didn't fail well.
Yeah.
You didn't fail well. But the idea being that she's trying to, if all of a sudden, if you can see that there is a little bit more of a lap, if she would have pressed it open, see how much, look at that. That's like is that, I don't even know, 1/8 of an inch there? That makes a difference of how that.
But it does make a difference. It makes
yes.
a huge difference in it.
Yes.
And now, Heidi, in some cases such as this, I do think when you're talking pressing towards the dark, when you're piecing something like this, it may not always be possible to always press towards the dark. That is according to your pattern, or if you have a design that you can do that.
Yep, and just the way I was putting them together, I've been sewing pairs and then putting 4 patches together and then sewing 4 patches together. So that's how I was doing it. But even the way I was pressing them every once in a while, it was like, and it went the wrong way. But that's okay.
And you can always correct it.
That's right.
So now we're going to switch to mine. A little bit
Yes.
different color difference here.
Yes.
But so these two are strips that have been pressed. They're ready to piece together. So let's talk a little bit about how I can piece these together nicely using that pressing to my advantage.
Yep. So now I'm going to say if it were me, I would have pressed one row one way and one row the other way.
And that's exactly what I did.
Oh, good girl.
Yeah.
You did a good job.
Yeah, thank you.
That way, when you put it over, now those seams are going in opposite directions. So I'm going to come up here and see if I can show you. Let me go this way. Maybe it's easier to do it this way. All right, can you see how I have got this seam going that direction? And that seam, is it focused there, Stacy?
Yeah, I think it looks good.
Yep, and then I can line up the seams here in the middle. Got to shift that one over just a little bit. Then I would take one of my silk pins, and I like to do down on one side and back up on the other side so that it kind of is at an angle across the seam.
And I would say too, Heidi, on this, one of the things that you, in time, as you start getting more experience, and certainly the experienced sewers can give their own, but you can start to feel that nestling together in there, and then pin it that way.
And the idea is that if they're going in the opposite direction, they're going to lay flatter. If you had them,
let's see if we can.
Well, I was going to say, because this one, I was going to say, can I do it with this one?
See if we can.
Is that, I mean, imagine that thickness, if you can see right there, I'm trying to get it focused, there we go, compared to if I actually had one going the opposite direction. Now it's spread out and it's going in opposite directions.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, absolutely.
You may ask a question, Stacey.
Stacy's in the background. How come you don't iron them open?
Good question. Very good question. There certainly are times when you can press a seam open. So what she's asking is we're pressing to one side. If you were to press open, it would be, and I can't get my fingers in there, it would be that I'm literally getting in there and pressing fabrics, both the other direction. Sometimes it's personal preference. I do have to say that if you have any kind of a tension issue and you press your seam open, can you see that, Stacy, on the screen? That I could actually pull it apart. Can you see the stitches?
Threads or the stitches? Okay.
So in a way, I think it can make it, I don't want to say it can make it weaker, but it can also
Let me see if I try it again.
loosen that, just especially at the
at
Yeah,
the
see,
start.
look at
Yeah.
like I can see through there. See how I can see right through there?
Yeah.
Versus if I have it pressed over to one side, then that is supporting that seam.
Okay.
So that's how I would look at that. Now, there are a few patterns when you get to some of those 16 points coming in
together,
and in the
There's
middle
different things to look at with those.
Correct. There's different issues with that, but in general, I think it is probably always safest to press one way or the other.
Yep. And a lot of patterns do a nice job of saying how to press.
Yes.
If you look at that when your pattern is open, usually it has an arrow. When you're piecing it together, the arrow on your pattern means which way to press the seam.
Correct.
If you didn't know that, maybe you already all knew that, but just
Yes.
a little tip to help you.
Yep.
One other thing I'd like to touch on, Heidi, because in this particular one, and maybe we can talk about it on this.
You want to get some of this off?
Yeah. So here's one that we have in progress right now. We showed you this last week because when we talked about we couldn't resist after we started seeing how cute it was, where we put together a fun kit for it.
Yep, so we put all these fabulous flannels together.
With the cute little snowman.
Isn't that fun with the little snowman?
And so here's the one that we got it all in process or progress, we'll call it right now.
Yep.
But on this particular pattern, or if you're a lot of the other ones you're doing, especially t-shirt quilts, you have like a sashing, which when I'm saying sashing, I'm referring to this line in here. Okay. Making sure that I get from, let's see if I can show it on a smaller one, from one side of the sashing to the other side of the sashing with those seams still lining up or still aligned.
Yes.
Okay. Some tricks on that because we know when, as Heidi was showing us, if we lay them out, we can pin the butting those pieces up, nestling them together.
So it makes it easy to match.
Yep.
But now,
when you have to take this and put it with this, I can't, with another piece of fabric in between, I can't always do that.
Correct.
Okay. So a couple tips for you. This one, because I'm using the big block and it's a small sashing, I can still kind of see across. If it's a wider sashing, for example, and this isn't this project, but just if you're ever using it for, say, instance, a t-shirt quilt, use a pencil, your fabric pencil, and you're going to mark on the right side of your fabric on your sashing, lay it out on one, I'm going to mark where it's at, or you can flip it over, mark where that line is at, then open it up. But you still want to make sure, I would always mark it on the right hand, or the correct side, the right side of the fabric, so you can see it. It's easier that way. Because, and I don't know, Heidi, if I'm doing it this way, can they see it in the camera or not?
Let me see.
You tell me. Do I need to turn around?
No, at the moment you can see it.
Okay, so I have my sashing here, and I'm going to kind of try to do this. So I would have this piece sewn down on here. But to match it up, I would take the line, so I would draw my line through my sashing where the seam is. Then same thing Heidi did before, I'm going to line that seam up with the line I've drawn on my sashing. That makes sense to everyone. On this particular one, again, I can see as I come down here how it's lining up. So I'm doing that because I could easily just sew this and think it's going to line up, which in a perfect hypothetically everything measured exactly correct and the stretch and everything fine, it may line up perfectly. But by doing that, it allows me, by just simply marking that on there and then pinning it, it does allow me to make sure that my lines are being exact. Just like, why do we pin pieces together? To make sure they line up according to that. I hope that helps. Does that make sense, Heidi? Or
it sure
any
does.
other tips with
It
that?
sure does. And while we're talking here, Deborah has a kind of a question point, talking even about opening up seams and asking if you open up your seams, should you be stitching with a shorter stitch length? And certainly that would help close up any gaps. I also at some point though worry that the shorter those stitches are, that your how do you want to say, not tension, the pull is even less, kind of thing. That anyway, I would definitely test it out before I made that decision completely as to how the shorter stitch length worked.
And so much of it is, it comes down to
personal preference.
Yeah, somebody might be adamant about they love having their seams open for different reasons. These are all just different ideas and tips that we have found that help people to be successful with what
absolutely.
they're doing.
But I think this is great to show them how and when you lay it over here, you can get it matched up on that way too. I mean, all sorts of just little tricks like that can make a difference in how your finished project looks.
And this one, I think the sashing isn't as big a deal because it's a smaller sashing. But when you get to some of those bigger ones, I'm looking around the store, I can think of a few that we have for samples that if you're not aligning it every time, it can become a bit of a off-skewed
Absolutely.
project.
So we've covered several things today. I think we've covered the gamut of what we want. Definitely, you need a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Secondly, things like pins can make a difference, but then also simply learning how to chain piece using a starter strip, and of course understanding how to put your sashing in and lining things up are also great tips.
Yeah. And if you have any further questions, we're always available. We love to help people. We love answering questions. And if sometimes we discuss ourselves how we would do something. So it's always good. And in that creative community here at Hen and Chicks on Facebook, Hen and Chick Studio, creative
they help each other.
Helping each other all the time.
Absolutely.
Yep. I'll go get the camera.
Very good. And so, as we wrap up today, we certainly hope that you're having fun in the festive fun sew along as well. Be sure to grab your free pattern. Be sure to go over to our creative community. And until the next time, next Monday when we do our fourth and final segment, be creative.